In 2017, Professor Jonathan Haidt was featured in an interview in the Wall Street Journal titled, "Jonathan Haidt on the Cultural Roots of Campus Rage." He used the term "a new religion" to describe the ideology behind the college unrest that has recently become so prevalent. This new religion is underpinned by four major assumptions, four core doctrines. Two are rooted in postmodernism: group identity and cultural relativism. The Bible affirms both the individual and the group. God imbues every individual with incredible value, dignity, and potential. He also creates humans for relationship. Families, ethnic groups, churches, etc. These communities profoundly shape us, but they don't define us. Each human bears God's image. Each one has a free will. We make choices. The new religion affirms only group identity. The beliefs and actions of individuals don't matter. In her book, Finding Truth, Nancy Pearcey says this doctrine implies that individuals are powerless to rise above the communities to which they belong. Individuals are little more than mouthpieces for communities based on race, class, gender, ethnicity, and sexual identity. The Harvard University student newspaper, without the slightest hint of irony, put it very simply: everything is about race. Maybe you've heard someone say, "It's a black thing, you wouldn't understand," or "It's a female thing, a transgender thing, you could never get it." In other words, all our choices and behaviors are determined by our identity group. There's no basis for personal freedom, personal responsibility, or personal accountability. We see this play out in a confrontation between some Yale University students and Professor Nicholas Christakis. Christakis speaks of human nature and human experience. For him, all lives matter, but the students aren't buying it. Christakis appeals to a vision of us as people, human beings with our common humanity, a vision that is interested not in what is different among us, but what is the same. In response, a black student gets right in the professor's face and says, "Look me right in the eye. Look at me. Your experience will never connect to mine." The student is speaking from his doctrine, his unquestioned assumption that race defines identity. No white person will ever connect to the student's reality. Of course, that begs the very question Christakis asked: then what is the reason you asked to be heard? What kind of society would come from this doctrine of group identity? No wonder we see ever-increasing social fragmentation, racial tension, hostility. If this new religion fully replaces the Judeo-Christian assumptions at the core of Western culture, what will result? We're already seeing troubling signs. Black students are self-segregating. Other identity groups are following suit. Instead of American history, students study black history, female history, gay and lesbian history. Do we really share no common history? This first core doctrine of group identity leads directly to a second, cultural relativism, or multiculturalism. Postmodernism admits to no transcendent objective truth or morality. Each identity group defines its own reality, which cannot be critiqued by outsiders. As Nancy Pearcey has pointed out, if anyone outside the group makes any claim to objective truth, that is seen as a power grab, an attempt by one community to impose its own limited subjective perspective on others. For example, if a Muslim group practices female genital mutilation or honor killing, multiculturalism forbids any value judgment from outsiders. After all, it's their culture, their reality. Who are you to judge? It's an established fact that some racial or ethnic groups suffer from higher rates of poverty, unemployment, drug addiction, divorce, unwed mothers. But this doctrine of multiculturalism forbids laying any blame on the beliefs or actions of those in the group. In keeping with the first core doctrine of group identity, individual belief or action isn't available for consideration. Rather, the blame must, by default, lie in the larger historical, social, or structural forces. This is why the new religion is seemingly obsessed with systemic or structural oppression or racism. To attribute negative outcomes to the beliefs or actions of those in the community is blaming the victim, and that's a cardinal sin in the new religion. There is one major exception to the non-judgmental approach demanded by cultural relativism. The Judeo-Christian belief system comes in for very harsh critique, usually in the form of attacks against Western civilization. Because America's history is part of the larger story of Western civilization, this explains the overwhelmingly critical view that adherents of the new religion have towards America and its history. That brings us to the third core doctrine, but that's for another post.